Hey, hi guys, it is Dan here, and today I'm going to be talking about Blood of Elves by Andrzej Sapkowski. Andrzej Sapkowski. We'll go with that. This is technically the third book in the Witcher series, but it's the second one that I've read. The first two are like short story collections, and this is the first in a 5-book like series of novels, basically. So I've been told that you don't necessarily need to read the second short story collection before you start with the series of novels, and I kind of wanted to get into the main plot, so that's what I did. And in terms of genre, it's like a dark fantasy type thing. So yeah, in this book we're kind of introduced to a world where there are a load of the traditional fantasy races, elves, dwarves, yada yada yada, and they're all kind of living side by side with these like human kingdoms, but they're kind of coming into conflict with them a bit now. Whilst there is also like the threat of this outside empire called Nilfgaard, that's kind of intent on taking over all of these human kingdoms, and it's not really super clear in the book whether Nilfgaard is a human empire or not. I'm kind of assuming it is, but it's quite vague on that. You've got two main protagonists. The first one is Geralt, who is a witcher, which is someone who's been like magically and chemically altered to be super awesome so that they can fight monsters. And the other main protagonist is Ciri, who is a princess from a kingdom called Sintra, which has been like brutally conquered by this Nilfgaardian empire, a few years ago. And Geralt kind of takes her under his wing, and at the start of the book, he's like training her up to be a witcher as well, but without all of the crazy mutations that he's had to undergo. Plot-wise, for me, there wasn't really a lot going on in this book. You're kind of introduced to the world and to a load of concepts that I guess are going to be important for the rest of the series. We're introduced to a bunch of different characters, and also to the general sort of political climate. But there's not like a great amount of story in it, I didn't think. So yeah, is it any good? Look, first of all, I guess before I say anything more, probably should just give a bit of context about how I was kind of feeling when I approached this book, because I just had like a real tough couple of weeks at work. I've been doing like a massive landscaping job, literally had to move like 100 tons of like earth and stone, and it was brutal. And also this book, it's super hyped up by a lot of people, a lot of my favourite people on BookTube, and people that I've spoken to in real life as well, because I do that. I had like really high, possibly unrealistically high expectations going into this. And also this series, there's a really popular series of video games that are based on this series. The Witcher, I think The Wild Hunt was the last video game, or just the really popular one anyway. And I never played them games. I don't really play computer games, and I haven't in a long time. So I didn't kind of have the that context and the visual imagery that comes along with it. But yeah, that all being said, I thought this book was pretty, I really didn't think it was worth all the going on about that I've seen. So yeah, I guess I'll tell you why. So anyway, like I said, this is the first proper novel in this series, but there are a couple of short story collections that sort of chronologically come before it. And I've read the first one, and I quite enjoyed that, as you'll know if you saw my review of that. And sort of what I concluded was, on the basis of that short story collection, was that this series, it had a load of potential that if Sapkowski could realise it. Yeah, I liked the idea of the short story format because I thought that was like a real great opportunity to put in some world building elements, some character development, so that as a reader you have a bit of background before you're dropped into the sort of main big epic story, spread over the five novels that are the main body of the series. But I think that opportunity was kind of missed now, looking back in hindsight. Ciri is like a full-on main character in this book, but she is basically like not mentioned definitely in the first short story collection. And Geralt as well, the other main protagonist, he feels in the novel like just a different character to the one that was portrayed in the short story collection for me. Like in the short stories, The Last Wish, the collection's called. In The Last Wish, Geralt's got like a real dry sense of humour. He's got some real funny moments, which is just barely evident in Blood of Elves. He's kind of just like this strong, silent, dour type in this. And also he's got some like fantastic dialogue in some of the short stories. He's got these great sections of dialogue where he's having conversations with other characters, moralising about his place in the world and his worldview in general. But again, that's barely evident in this book. It happens once or twice, but I mean, not as much as I wanted, for sure. In fact, speaking of dialogue, that was a real problem for me throughout the book. It felt really stilted and unnatural a lot of the time, and I understand that this may be a problem because this book is a translation from the original Polish. So yeah, maybe the dialogue comes across better in the original Polish, but yeah, I mean I couldn't get along with it. It felt really stilted to me. And I think this problem of translation also affects some of the prose generally as well. Like, honestly, whenever there's a fight scene, count how many times they use the word pirouette. It was really starting to annoy me by the end. Like, pirouette is not even a common word, and it turns out like there's one point where it's 3 times in one paragraph. It's like, come on, just say spin. You can just say spin. That's a word. It means the same thing. Ugh, anyway. But yeah, another problem that I had with the dialogue was that it was used really often just purely for exposition. It really bugs me when you've got a character and they're explaining something to another character that they would already know. Right? These characters, both, like for example, with the magic system or something, you'll get one character explaining the magic system to another character, and then at the end of this explanation, they'll go, "Oh, but of course you already knew that," and it's purely just a device, for getting across this information that the reader needs. But it felt really clumsy, and it happened like a whole bunch. It happened with the magic sister when Yennefer was explaining it to Ciri. It happened with the geography of the world when this guy Jari or Jar, I don't know how to pronounce it, was explaining it also to Ciri. And there's like a really long section at the start of one of the chapters where you've just got all the rulers of these various kingdoms getting together to talk about the political situation and just saying stuff that that all of them would already know. I found it really quite annoying. And also, as I kind of touched on a little bit before, I thought the plot was weak. The plot was pretty weak. Like, it's basically all set up for the rest of the series. This book doesn't have a plot in its own right. It's just got a load of setup, and a lot of it is just a vehicle to explain Ciri's training. Right, Ciri picks up like a whole bunch of skills throughout this book, but so much of it was just a training montage, and it wasn't done in a particularly original way or anything. And I didn't think there was enough getting into the characters' heads while they were doing that for it to be worth spending that much time on it. I mean, I think it's just a reason why, I guess, in the later books, it'll be to explain why Ciri has all of these, cool abilities. Oh yeah, and also in the short stories, like my favourite aspect of that, really, apart from the much better dialogue, was the fact that they were like these short story retellings, and that was done really well. But is, you know, just nowhere near as evident in the novel. And I know it's more difficult to get that across in a longer format, but I mean, could have done more to try. So yeah, anyway, I know that was like a bit of a rant, and sorry about that. I do actually have some like good things to say about this book. It wasn't like I know from what I'm saying, it sounds like it's really bad, but I think that's just because my expectations were so high that I was disappointed when it didn't reach them. For me, what this book is, it's a pretty average like fantasy book, and it does have a lot of good points as well. You know, pretty much all of the characters, whether they're primary or secondary characters, are really well written, you know, even if their dialogue isn't. You know, they've got really clear and nuanced motivations, and also like relationships that are realistically informed by their life experiences. You know, Ciri, especially, I thought was a very strong character. She won't be pushed around by anyone, and her experiences of her home being like brutally conquered when she was a child, and you know, her being left an orphan, means that she's got this like sense of responsibility to defend the helpless, but also there's this sense of a real vulnerability at the core of her, which made her really engaging to read. Yennefer, who is a character that was introduced in the end of the short story collection and kind of comes into this novel a bit further on as well. She's really fun to read about, basically because she's like super sarcastic and pretty funny. And then you've got in the sort of first third of the book, you've got this character Yarpen, the dwarf, who is used really well to give you a sense of the relations between the like humans and non-humans, and so you know what I mean. Sapkowski, he can portray stuff through the narrative without resorting to exposition, but yeah, he obviously can do it. So I don't know why he didn't do it more, because he does it really well with this, you know, Yarpen guy. And I thought the sort of interspecies relations were portrayed like really well overall. You know, you've kind of got factions within factions, and they're all trying to manipulate their way to like either domination or at least, you know, survival. But all they end up doing is kind of deepening the divisions and polarizing themselves from each other. That was really well done. So yeah, overall, like I say, I thought this book was pretty average, but a lot of that might be to do with my own state of mind when I went into it, and also the fact that it was hyped so much that my expectations were unrealistic, because I was expecting to really enjoy it. But yeah, I am going to carry on with the series. I own the next two novels, so 2 and 3 out of the 5 novel series, with the hope that I'm going to enjoy them more now that my expectations have been reduced a little bit. So yeah, we'll see, and I'll put up reviews of them as I go. So yeah, that's that. Sorry if this was a bit long and if it was a bit ranty, but yeah, bye.